There's a legend around here about how peculiar this stretch of forest of nowhere really is. Talks of strange beasts that prowl in the night, always just out of eyeshot and devouring the souls of the innocent. Hell, I've even heard tales passed around by the locals about monsters made of trees and mud, glowing eyes in the dark, and shifting black shapes just below the surface of that damn lake. On the other hand, these are just stories. Childish tales passed down by those with weak imaginations. It may have been enough to keep the local teens away from the Lawson Lake campgrounds, to steer clear of that lake and therefore negating trespass and vandalism. I, on the other hand, am not superstitious, and am not some deviant teenager looking to score a place for a beer party. However, there is an advantage to coaxed seclusion of this forest haven: the fishing. On early, still mornings, the water steamy and placid, huge fish can be seen leaping free from the surface tension of the lake in an ambushed display of water and frenzy that dazzled the scene like a ballet of nature, only for the fish to collide with the water with a splash before disappearing once again below the glassy surface, resetting the scene of tranquility once again. Kayak unloaded and set on a crisp and foggy morning, bathed in the twilight illumination of a slowly rising sun behind the horizon, I pushed off from shore, completely alone in my nirvanic surroundings. Only minutes had passed as I watched a lily bed, sure to be ripe with considerably sized largemouth, ready for the taking. I cast my line, and after the ripples had dissipated, began my slow retrieve. However, I couldn't be sure, but it seemed as though the water itself, or something else below the surface, followed my bait back to the bow as I cranked the reel. If this was a living thing, it was larger than what my low-laid eyes could see from the water-level perspective, creating the appearance of the entire shadow of darkness in the depths below me to shift as I reeled, somehow flowing towards me. A shape like a great leviathan, far too large to have any business in a body of water this small, lending credence that this was an illusion created by my own imaginative mind. Once the bait was just beyond my stern, I pulled it free from the water with my rod, noticing the shadow or lake itself no longer appearing to be moving or shifting. I assumed the happenstance to be a trick of the eye in combination with early morning fatigue and low light. But what I saw just before I was tossed from my kayak couldn't have been real. In an instant, the water exploded around me, as if a bomb had detonated below me, and my body was thrown high into the air, heaved from my kayak. The sight below the surface had not resolved. The horror was still there, awaiting my return to the lake below, and in a flash, it was over. I had been submerged within the lake, and everything had gone black. I can't recall the specifics of what happened after that, because I have no memory of them. When I opened my eyes, I was laying upon the shores of that lake, near to that old abandoned camp. My kayak was nowhere to be found, and I had no idea as to how I got back to dry land. I knew, however, that somehow I didn't feel right. Something was horribly wrong with me. My body and limbs didn't move how I intended them to. My sight was blurred and fogged, as if I was looking at the world through an empty soda bottle. But when I stood and looked into the lake, I finally understood. I jumped in fright, thinking that that thing had come for me again. But I stopped when I realized that the sight before me was my own reflection, and the green eyes that I had spotted earlier were not the same as the ones I visually imbibed now, the green eyes that were mirrored back instead belonged to me.